So this video will serve Elevation Church's Uptown campus for the midweek service. This is for the parking team and parking setup.
So the parking team bin is between the baptism tank and the baptism kit shelves, and it will have 6 of these A-frames in them. The first one will be, you can't really see it, and it'll say Elevation Church with an arrow pointing away from the logo. The next A-frame will say Elevation Church with the arrow pointing towards the logo. The next sign will say Lot Full with the tip of the arrow facing the word full. The next sign will be a volunteer parking sign with the tip of the arrow facing the V in volunteer. And the final sign will be the VIP sign. Also in the parking bin will be 6 of these elevation parking cones, 1 of these feather flag stands, and then a sack of sand to hold this down. Finally, the bucket of wands and orange parking vests and walkie-talkies will be in the bin. All of these elevation feather flags will be stored on top of the baptism tank. So what I like to do, just for ease, is to stick them in the bin and then roll it out all together. So once the parking bin is out front, the first stake is going to be right here, and you're going to stick one of the welcome feather flags in the ground. Now these stakes, all of them, are permanently pounded into the ground, so all you have to do is line this bearing up with the hole and it sits right in. After this one and only welcome banner is planted in the front, start walking down this parking lot through the guest slot, and you'll find your next stake in the ground, which is right next to this pole. Now, one thing I want to mention is that there are 3 different sizes of elevation and parking feather flags. So the first one, this one right here, there will be 3 of these that are going to be at the intersection. And then there's going to be a second one, which will be at the very, very top of the street up here. And then this third flag is going to be mounted right here in front of this pole. You can tell the difference between the flags because this first one is just the biggest flag. The second one is a big flag, but it has a lot of exposed rod right here. And then this last pole is just a shorter flag. And since I'm over here, I like to set up the 6 elevation parking cones right in front of this pole that will go across the street here, but there will be an extra gap in one of the set of cones for the officer on duty to drive through. So as you can see, I have these cones set up across the street, and then this last gap is just big enough for the patrol car to drive through. So while I'm walking towards the intersection of Bryant Street and Summit, I like to go ahead and set up the volunteer parking sign, because this is the volunteer parking lot and this is the guest parking lot. And then I also like to set up this A-frame sign that says Elevation Church parking for guests down here. Also, while you're down here, I like to unload these and set them up against this pole, this telephone pole. Also over here is another feather flag stake. There's a feather flag stake in the ground right there. And then there is a feather flag stake in the ground across the street. So once all the A-frames are unloaded and the feather flags are all set up, what I like to do next is come over here to the A-frame signs, grab the Elevation Church one with the arrow pointing away from the logo, and then the first time guest A-frame sign. What I'll do is I'll walk them over here. I'll put the first time guest sign in the middle of this grassy patch, and then I'll put the elevation parking sign at the end of that sidewalk. So now I have this VIP A-frame here, and then I have this elevation parking A-frame right here. I'll usually have a volunteer from the parking team stand about here guiding people through the different lanes. So in front of this volunteer parking sign, there is an Elevation Church parking sign. And if you have the manpower, I recommend having a volunteer standing here directing people towards their parking lot. So this is where it's convenient to have 2 people, because you can have one person carry this last flag and the other person carry the mount and the sandbag. What we're going to do is we're going to walk it up this street towards where that Enterprise truck is. So now that we're at the intersection of Summit and Moorhead, I'll walk over to this manhole over here and I'll place the mount and the sandbag on top of it with the flag in there so that people can see this feather flag from the street. Once this main guest parking lot is filled, I will take this A-frame sign that says lot full and I'll stick it right here in this pedestrian crossing. And then I will remove the volunteer parking sign and have a volunteer stand right here guiding people into the volunteer parking lot. Once this guest parking lot gets filled, usually I will have the volunteer standing at this sign with a walkie-talkie, and then I'll have another volunteer with a walkie-talkie in this parking lot, updating him on how many parking spots are left, and when they need to shut down this parking lot and start guiding guests into the volunteer lot. I typically like to keep VIP 17 and 18 open, and then VIP 1 and 2 open, just in case there are VIPs coming to midweek for the first time. But typically, once guests come in this entrance, I will just park them one by one, VIP 19, VIP 20, fill up this whole row, come down to this section, and just kind of snake my way across. So if this was the first parking lot, I would have a guest come in right here and have them pull all the way through to this parking spot, and then I would have the next guest follow through into this spot. And I'll do that same thing all the way down. Now, in case there's a really big event happening at midweek, I like to park people in this far parking lot first. It's a little bit smaller, but it has some extra spaces. Again, if there's VIPs or handicap guests, then you'll just want to park them over here in the handicap spots, or the VIP 17 and 18 or VIP 1 and 2 on the other side of this yellow car. So I like to take the rolling bin and store it right behind this pipe and drape during the experience, along with these vests and wands in here, so my volunteers can just go ahead and grab those, and then it's all hidden away and it's all nice and neat.